Okay, so I'm just gonna start chatting. A few things before we get properly started, though, is first, as I've said a couple of times, I am recording this to upload on YouTube later, so people can access this as a VOD. If your voice being on the internet makes you uncomfortable, you should probably avoid talking. You can mute your microphone or whatever. I'm also streaming a slideshow on Discord that most people are watching. You do not have to look at the slideshow if you do not want to, but if you do, if you go on to Discord and you look into the general voice chat and you see my name, if you hover over it, it'll bring up an option to view my stream, which you can click on, and it'll open up a window where you can see the slideshow. Next is, this is kind of a second installment, I guess. So we did an intro to advanced combat workshop a couple of months ago, which kind of talks about like very introductory ideas to raiding, and this is kind of the next step up to that. But if you did not watch that, or if you're new to raiding, which I don't think any of us here are completely new, but you can also watch that video, which I'll post later. And then in Discord, we have beginner chat, which you can ask any questions you want, and I can answer them as we go, and then at the end as well. And then I'll also be posting a ton of resources in beginner chat as we go through this as well, mostly at the end. But yeah. So ideas that we're talking about today, kind of two distinct parts. So part one, we're kind of going to be talking about learning encounters in raids, and then mastering those encounters. And then we're going to talk about expanding build diversity and like what you can do in raids, and then learning specialty roles. And then second part is getting legendaries, earning achievements, learning how to clear consistently, clear raids consistently, clear bosses, and then some questions. So starting off, I have two kind of basic questions that are popular questions that people ask. The first is, are raids hard? The short and honest answer to this question is no. Raids honestly are not that difficult. Once people start getting into it and start learning the game, kind of being able to clear all the raid bosses is not that hard. And a lot of people have this kind of preconceived idea that like raid bosses and Guild Wars 2 are impossible challenges that you like only the top 0.01% of people can beat. For most encounters in this game, that's not the case, and most people are going to be able to clear most raid bosses, Harvest Temple CM not included, as of right now anyways. Next question, which was directly asked to me and was kind of like the inspiration for this entire presentation, was, when are you ready to try harder content? And the basic answer to that is when you feel like it. So whenever you feel like you want to do something more than just like wing 1, wing 4, and when you want to push yourself to do more. So on the topic of pushing yourself, some important ideas to consider is that there are a lot of different boss fights in the game. So as you go through and learn every single raid and like strike in the game, there's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of different mechanics you have to learn for each boss fight, and as you do this, you need to learn the game. So you need to learn like basic stuff like how to move, how to do skills, everything with the game. You have to do that alongside the mechanics for each boss, and then you need to learn how to work with a group and work with other people in fighting raid bosses. So some questions that you should probably ask yourself as like we go into this is ideas to consider for learning encounters. So first is, do I have the time to spend doing progression? And like with that is, do I have the time to clear raid bosses once I've like learned them? Raids can sometimes take up a lot of time. So if you're someone who's really busy and you don't have a lot of time to dedicate, maybe like 4 hours a week, maybe like 3 hours 2 days a week, something like that. If you don't have that time to dedicate to raids, it's probably not going to be like the best decision for you to do if it's going to take away from like other things in your life that you should prioritize. And then additionally, are you interested in doing raids and doing strike missions and whatnot? if you're not interested in doing raids, you probably shouldn't be doing raids unless you feel some sort of like obligation from something other than interest. So why should I play harder content? Why should you even put in the effort to do this? One is rewards. There are a lot of different rewards, and we'll look at some of them in a little bit. And then second is fun from the challenge. So we did, our group in TOA did Doom last night for like 5 hours. We didn't clear it, but we had a lot of fun just pulling Doom over and over. And then third is playing with other people. If you're like a social person and you like to engage with people in like a social environment, and if you like to like engage with people in maybe a more stressful environment, I guess you could say, for raids, it might be good for you. And then fourth is to get better at the game. As you do raids and strikes, you're going to be pushing yourself to become better, so it's going to give you the opportunity to like master your main profession and maybe multiple other professions as well. So next, just really quickly for people that might not understand or know, is a quick overview of all the raids. So as you push through different raids and fight different bosses, these are all the bosses you're looking at for Heart of Thorns, which are the first 4 raid wings, and then Path of Fire, which are the next 3 raid wings. And then there's also strike missions for Ender Dragons. But so most of us know Wing 1, Veil Guardian, Gorseval, and Sabbatha. But as you push through every raid, you should be looking at resources for like each of these bosses, and you'll be practicing for each of these bosses as well. So different ways to learn fights. 3 things listed right here. First, a lot of people tend to do homework by watching video guides. So one great resource for video guides is Muckluck. He has a Get to the Point series where he basically takes every single raid boss in the game individually and has like a 3 to 5 minute video depending on the boss for every boss in the game that basically just gives a quick rundown of mechanics and what you have to do and able to beat the boss. And then there's also a lot longer and more in-depth videos that people upload, such as Mighty T-Bot. He has guides for all the raid bosses in the game where he'll explain all the mechanics in depth, and he'll show a full pull and kill of each raid boss, so you can kind of see the whole encounter. Next for homework is written resources. If you're someone who doesn't like videos, or if you're someone who wants more than just videos, you can look through written resources, which will write out strategies, mechanics, and everything related to boss fights. So Hardstuck and Snow Crows tends to be the 2 biggest written resources for raid bosses, where both websites, both guilds have very good resources and very good guides for every single boss in the game. And then third is just practicing. If you want to learn how to clear raid bosses, you're going to have to just practice raid bosses. You're going to have to join trainings. You're going to have to join groups, and we'll talk more about groups in a little bit. But you're just going to have to bash your head into the boss, and based off the homework you did with the video guides or written resources, you're going to take what you learned and you're going to apply it and practice while fighting the boss. So next, we're kind of going to talk about expanding build diversity. So like many people who start off in raids might not even have a build, and they might be getting like their first build up. And then a lot of people that might have been doing raids for a little bit might only have 1 build. So we're going to talk a little bit about getting more than 1 build. So build diversity is important in raids because there are a lot of different roles. And if you have a lot of different builds, you can take up a lot of different slots in a group. So to quickly like summarize the different roles in raids, there's DPS, healers, boon supports, tanks, which are specialty roles, and then other specialty roles as well. So this cheat sheet on the right is a little bit outdated now, but it's a pretty good basic resource for different like builds and like boons and everything you need to put together a squad. So just looking at like a quick basic squad compositions, when we're looking at a 10-person squad, you're kind of wanting to cover 4 primary boons, 2 of which are alacrity and quickness. So you want to have at least 1 person in each subgroup of a raid, so each 5 people, that can provide 100% alacrity to everyone and 100% quickness to everyone. And then you also want someone who can heal. Most of the time you have 2 healers, 1 in each subgroup. And then you fill out the rest of the sub with DPS. And then you have other people that can provide other boons, such as might, and are able to keep 25 stacks of might up on everyone in their subgroup. But that's a little bit more advanced than just like a basic cheat sheet like this right here. There's a lot of different variations of squad compositions you can do, where you can have someone who is a healer and alacrity at the same time. And then before the most recent balance patch, there was an alacrity and quickness build that could do both at the same time, but unfortunately that got nerfed with the balance patch. But with looking at all the different builds in the game and all the different roles that people are going to do in raids, what builds should you play? So first, you should be playing builds that you want to play and you enjoy playing. So for example, you need healers in raids. If you're someone who does not enjoy healing whatsoever, does not enjoy any healing builds in Guild Wars 2, you probably shouldn't be playing a healer in raids. You should let other people do that, and you should be looking at different builds yourself. Second, you should be playing multiple different builds. So short-term goals that I tend to give people is you should be able to play 1 DPS build and then 1 boon support build. So for example, if you're playing Guardian, you should be able to play a Condi Firebrand or Condi Willbender DPS build, and then also have a Quick Brand build. So you can provide 100% quickness to everyone, or a Heal Brand build, so you could be provide 100% quickness to everyone and heal everyone. Those are just like 2 builds you could run. But when you're looking long term and you're looking at like really pushing yourself in raids, you should try to get many builds and like learn many different builds. So at least 1, but probably more, like power DPS builds, 1 or more Condi DPS builds, 1 or more alacrity builds, 1 or more quickness builds, and then 1 or more specialty roles. So looking at like specialty builds. Oh, wait, sorry. Continue on. As the game changes, builds become stronger and weaker. And mini builds are good to use, even if they're not meta. So a lot of people really like kind of just focus on like benchmarks. And benchmarks are good to go off of, but in reality, there's a lot of different builds that you can play. So if you just like look through builds on different websites and stuff, you can find builds that you can just run and you can practice and you could probably perform very well with. A reminder for some of those websites is Hardstuck and Snowcrows. These are 2 great resources for more in-game builds. Snowcrows is dedicated more to like optimization, where Hardstuck is more not casual, but more casual, I guess. Not less optimal, but still very, very good. And then of course there are many other places for builds as well. Now, looking at specialty roles. So we have like basic DPS, basic boon supports that give like quickness or alacrity, and basic healers. But depending on different raid bosses, there are special roles that are individualized for specific boss fights. So like while most people might be doing like their basic DPS rotations or their basic like boon support rotations and stuff, you might be playing a build and doing a job that is very special. So the most common special role that we see with bosses is a tank, where not every boss requires a tank, but many bosses do. And sometimes those run dedicated builds, but sometimes those just take already existing builds and adds a little bit of toughness on them to be able to let them tank. So for example, like a heal brand or a heal-lac mechanist build tends to be super popular with TOA to tank. So they're doing then multiple things at the same time, where they're healing, they're providing boons, and they're tanking. But beyond tanking, there are a lot of different specific mechanics that require people to do specific jobs or sometimes run specific builds. So some examples of those for boss fights throughout like all 7 wings. Looking at like Gorseval, you have a Spirit's Rooter, which is typically a ranger, that Condi ranger that's running Entangled. And then you have a Spectral Darkness Killer, which will sometimes also be that ranger. And then looking at like Sabbatha, there's someone who's kiting flak, and then there's 2 people typically that run to cannons and go kill the cannons. And then there's more and more and more for each boss fight. These are the examples that I came up with, but depending on strategies and whatnot, there are more jobs that people can do. Some of these run very dedicated builds. So for example, Demos, Hand Kiter, is a very specific build that people will gear up and will only ever play that build most of the time on Demos, doing that job of hand kiting. Pylon Camper, kind of similar, more of a DPS oriented build, but it's also kind of designed to be very sustaining and very maneuverable to be able to go and do the mechanics that they have to do for Kadim. So next, looking at legendaries and raids. First, there is legendary armor, which comes from raid wings 1 through 4, which is Heart of Thorns. And then there's the legendary ring, which comes from Path and Fire, which is wings 5 through 7. Most people that are doing raids tend to start off doing raids to get legendary armor and the legendary ring as well. More people go for the armor than people go for the ring. So looking at armor, there's 2 different collections to get the legendary armor. The first collection unlocks after you kill any boss in raid wings 1 through 3, and it requires you to get items from wings 1 through 3. And then the second collection unlocks after you complete the whole first collection and requires items from wing 4. So the first collection, a list of 5 things here. 1, there's a dog barking in the background. Sorry. 1, you need to kill every single boss in raid wings 1, 2, and 3. Then number 2, you need to get items from inside the raid, so items that the bosses drop when you kill them, and you have to take them outside of the raids and do something with them. 3, you need to bring items from outside of the raid and bring them inside to do things. 4, important, there's a time gate on this collection where you need to kill Gorseval 5 times. So you need to spend 5 weeks to be able to kill Gorseval those 5 times in order to get spirit threads for Spirit Weave. And then you also need to do multiple Spirit Woods clears, which tends to add up to about 5 weeks to get 10 ectoplasmic residue to be able to get that item for the collection. So the outside items that you need to bring in to raids for this collection is a living crystal from Earth Elemental and Tangled Depths. You need this for wing 1 for Veil Guardian. Then you need a soul mirror from Burnisher Kingo and Auric Basin. You need this for Spirit Woods, which is the event right after Veil Guardian. And then you need an Itzo Spirit Poison from Jaka Itzo, and you have to use this every time you pull Key Construct as you fight him. And then you need a Polished Aurelium from Scavenger Rakuten, or however you pronounce that name, in Auric Basin. And you need this to use it in Twisted Castle. Both Key Construct and Twisted Castle are wings 3. If you check the wiki is a good resource for all the collections for armor and rings, but it'll show you where you need to go to get every item and where everything is and what you have to do with every item. So some tips for people who are looking to complete the first collection is you should gather all the items you need from outside of raids and then store them in your bank. And then whenever you go into raids, make sure you grab them and put them on your character that you are raiding with. Second, make sure you get your Gorseval kills in. Again, you need at least 5 weeks to get 5 Gorseval kills. And then you also need to make sure that you open chests and Spirit Woods. If you miss clearing Wing 1, you can try to find someone who has a cleared Wing 1 instance or has at least cleared 2 Gorseval, and you can go and grab chests when you want. And then for Raid Wing 2, there are several items in the wing that are kind of just sitting on the floor, and you need to make sure you go and grab them. And you can, again, check this on the wiki, but you need to get a giant beehive after trio, which is sitting up in like a tree. And then you need to get a vial of water and a bloodstone powder, which are both available to get after you kill Matthias, which is the final boss of Wing 2. So after your first collection, there's Envoy 2. This requires you to craft a crystalline heart, which requires 100 crystalline ingots, which you craft with crystalline ore from Dragon's Stand, as well as a couple other things, fulgurite, which requires drops from all the Heart of Thorns maps. And then it requires you to do a bunch of different activities in the open world, and then also a bunch of different activities in fractals. And then it requires you to complete a challenge for each boss in Wing 4. So some tips for Envoy 2 is right now you should start gathering up crystalline ingots. So go do some dragon storms, go open some, what are they called? Nauseous pods with machetes, and just collect some up. And then once you unlock the collection, you should take your ingots and whatever else you need and craft the crystalline heart so you can start the collection and start getting all of the open world and fractal parts once you get the collection. So with each boss challenge in Raid Wing 4, you need to activate the heart before you do the boss every single time. So when you die, the heart will, or heart buff that you get from double clicking the heart, which you need the buff in order to get credibility for the achievement, or credit for the achievement, it will disappear after you die. So make sure you double click it before you pull each boss every single time. So with the Mersad Overseer and Samurag parts of the achievement, the parts are super easy to get and very quick to do. And with Mersad Overseer at least, you'll probably get that even without going for it. With the Demos part, all you need to do is just get it killed. The issue with this is you need to be alive when Demos dies. So you need to get good a little bit, and you need to make sure that you're alive when Demos ends up dying. Karen is the hard part of this collection and is really the only difficult part at all in the entire second collection. So when you're fighting Karen and you have the hard buff on you, you need to make sure that you stand inside every single green circle that spawns during Gorseval. So like one circle, any green circle, whenever green circle spawns. If you miss getting inside of a green circle, you're going to lose credit for the achievement and you're going to have to restart the boss fight. And then one big tip for this is to communicate with the group when you're doing the hard challenges. So typically with Demos, it will just be alive when you kill it. With Mersad Overseer, you need to make sure that whoever has the protection special action, that they use it at least once during the fight. And then with Samurag, you just have to kind of stall on pushing Rigaman a little bit, so you need to make sure the group kind of just hangs out for a second. And then with Karen, you might mess up several times, so if you're trying to get the heart, you should check with your group that if it's okay to maybe like restart the boss fight real quick so you have another chance to do it. Or just clear Karen once a week and just keep trying to get it. So after armor and Path of Fire, there's Coalescence, which is the legendary ring. This is 3 different collections, which is 1 for each of the Path of Fire raids. Each collection unlocks after completing the previous collection. So the first one is with Raid Wing 5. You just have to kill just the first, second, and fourth boss in Wing 5. And you have to collect items from chests after each of those bosses. And then once you've done that, you just do some open world stuff. Collection 2, you just have to kill any boss in Wing 7, and then you buy an item, and then you just do a bunch of open world stuff. And then Collection 3, you kill all the bosses in Wing 7, and then, surprise, you do a little bit of open world stuff. Once you've done all that, you completed all the collections, and then you can craft the legendary ring. So some tips for Coalescence is once you complete the boss killing part of each collection, you should do the open world part as soon as possible so that you can unlock the next collection. So you don't want to clear all of the bosses for one part of your collection and then start doing the next wing while you don't have that collection unlocked. You want to make sure you get the collection available as soon as possible. And then for people, this is really weird, for people that created accounts before September 18th, 2018, this date is significant because it is the day that Raid Wing 6 released. You can use Legendary Insights, which are the items you get from Heart of Thorns raids, as well as Ender Dragon Strike missions, in creating your Coalescence. If your account was made after September 18th, 2018, then you can only use Legendary Divinations. So if your account is old, you can kind of speed up the Coalescence process by clearing Heart of Thorns raids in order to speed up getting in all the legendary divinations you need. So really quickly, legendary insights and divinations. Insights, you get 1 per boss and per summon counters in wings 1 through 4. And then divinations is the same exact thing, but wings 5 through 7. And you can also get 5 legendary insights from doing End of Dragon strikes. You can get 1 per challenge mode, and then you can get another 1 for doing all 4 strikes, normal or challenge mode, in a week. Every single person can turn divinations, so the ones you get from Path of Fire, into insights. So you can use Path of Fire raids to help progress your legendary armor. But people who have accounts older than September 18th, 2018 can only turn insights into divinations. So younger people cannot do it. So with legendary insights and divinations, when we're looking at legendary armor, you need 150 legendary insights for your first set of legendary armor. So the first one you ever make. Then after you create your first set, you need 300 legendary insights for each of your second and third sets of legendary armor. So if you decide to create heavy legendary armor, you only need 150 legendary insights. And then when you decide you want to make medium, you need to grind out 300 more. And then once you've done that and you want to make light, you need to grind out 300 more. And then for your ring, you need 150 legendary divinations. So altogether, when you combine 300 plus 300 plus 150 plus 150, we're doing some math, you need 900 raid boss kills, which I believe you can currently get 30 per week, I believe, which would then be 30 weeks of clearing every single raid boss in the game. So it takes at least 30 weeks to get all of the armor and the ring if you're doing every raid boss every week. So for most people, it's going to take longer than 30 weeks because most people aren't going to clear every single raid boss in a week, especially starting off when you're learning all these different bosses. So beyond armor and rings, each raid has a set of achievements that are tied to them. So when you look at Spirit Veil here, there's a ton of achievements in there, and we can see Last Cannon is ironically the last achievement I need from Spirit Veil. And these achievements are a variety of different things. Some of them are just killing the boss for the first time. Some of them are doing special mechanics. That Last Cannon achievement, you have to leave 1 cannon alive on Sabbatha for the duration of the entire fight. And then there's scavenger hunt achievements where you need to collect different books from around the raid wing after you clear it. And then there's more. Completing all of the achievements in a raid wing will sometimes earn you cool rewards, especially in the Path of Fire raids. You can get really cool chairs from completing all of the achievements. And you can also get some really cool titles as well. So a specific type of achievement are challenge motes, which are basically kind of like a heroic or more difficult version of each raid, where it might add an additional mechanics to a boss fight or basically just buff the boss up, make the fight harder. Many people only do challenge modes once just to get the achievement out of the way and get the title or whatever. But when looking at Path of Fire and Heart of Thorns raids, some people would do 5 challenge modes every week. So sometimes they'll just pick the 5 easiest ones and they'll do it, because doing so will get you 10 gold and then a chest with some goodies in it. Looking at like challenge modes too, this is kind of an area that requires progression as well. So you might learn a raid boss on like its normal mode, then you'll have to learn how to do it on its harder mode as well, which will take time as well. So working up to being able to clear consistently, so being able to clear every raid boss or multiple raid bosses every single week, we have a few different things to look at. First is your own skill. So you need to be able to kill bosses, you need to be able to know the bosses. So this requires you to do all the homework. You have to watch videos, guides, and then you need to go into raids. You need to join a group, which we'll talk about in just a second, and you need to practice against bosses, and then everything else. You need to master raid bosses. once you learn how to like kill raid bosses, you'll be able to clear them consistently if you're able to get a group for it. So next is groups. There are many different types of groups that we can look at with raids. So first, PUGs, pickup groups, or sometimes pickup games, but in the context of MMOs, pickup groups are groups in LFG. Second is training groups, which TOA does, as well as many other guilds such as Raid Academy. And then static groups, which is also something that TOA does, as well as many other guilds. So looking at PUGs, you can join a PUG at any point in looking for a group. You can also start your own PUG group, just get a squad going, and then throw it up in LFG for whatever raid boss you want to do. A lot of listings in LFG are raid sellers. Ignore them. Just unless you want to buy them, but honestly, it's typically not worth to spend the gold to just buy something that raid sellers are selling. And then LFG posts have a lot of terminology and acronyms that you need to learn. So looking at some LFG post examples, so top left corner, we can see this person is doing a Wing 4 challenge mode. Prog is like short for progression. So they are learning how to do Wing 4, the challenge mode. They are currently on Samrog. This is a quirky way to say Salmon Girl. We can tell by the person's name. They have a very awkward name because there are no hunters in Guild 2. They're just using a very weird way of saying Samrog. And then they are saying that the last slot they need is a DPS. So if you are a healer and you join, they're not going to be happy because they are looking for a DPS. Top right, they're doing a full clear of Wing 3 and they're currently at Keep Construct, so KC is short for Keep Construct. Afterwards, they're going to do Wing 4 and they're looking for at least 50 KP. It stands for Kill Proof. So when you kill a boss, it drops tokens that you can donate to the guild to use for guild decorations. These are Kill Proof that you can link in chat to be able to show that you killed the boss. Or you get a link online and use that instead. And then they're looking for an Alacrity DPS for the last slot. Bottom left is a little different. They're looking for 2 more people for a raid at a later time. So they're looking for Monday, July 11th, which happens to be tomorrow. At 30 minutes before reset, they're looking for 2 DPS who are experienced with mechanics on every single boss. And for this group, you would join, and then he has some information in the squad message, and then you would mail the commander if you're interested in joining this group. And then last, Wing 4. This is a group dedicated for the heart for Cairn for doing the Legendary Armor Collection. So for people that were looking to grind out getting their heart for Cairn, this would be a good group to join, and they're looking for everything. They only have themselves. So next from PUGs is raid trainings. So as all of you should hopefully know, TOA does raid trainings every Friday at 4:30 p.m. Pacific time. That's half an hour before reset. These raid trainings are open to everyone, and we're kind of teaching every boss fight in the game. A lot of our more experienced people are learning Path of Fire raids right now, so we've been really focused on Heart of Thorns while we get people knowledgeable enough to lead Path of Fire raids. And then generally we only ever run 1 or 2 groups a week, and we only ever clear a few bosses. Sometimes we get a really good group going and we clear many bosses, and then sometimes we'll only clear like 3 that night. There are many other guilds that do raid trainings as well. One of the biggest of those guilds is Raid Academy, and they basically just host a ton of raid trainings at a ton of different times from a ton of people for a ton of people. And you can join their Discord with this Discord link that I'll share in a little bit. Next from raid trainings is looking at static raids. So lots of guilds have statics of different varieties. And when we're looking at different statics, it can be very different from one another. But across the board, a static is a group of 10 people that will meet at the same exact time on the same exact day every single week. So you can find many different guilds that have statics. So STOA, we're currently trying to build up a second static group for players who are interested in joining a static. So if any of you here are interested in joining that static, we're trying to get a few more people up in that group, and you're trying to get someone to lead that group as well. So if you're interested, I'll have a link to a form that you can fill out if you would like to join. And then you can find many other guilds on websites around the game to join statics as well. So lastly, I kind of just want to touch up on this concept of what is raid mastery. And this definition of raid mastery can be really different for a lot of people, but how I personally view it is basically being able to clear every single raid boss in the game, playing multiple different builds. So you know how to tank Veil Guardian, you know how to do DPS on Veil Guardian, you know how to heal Veil Guardian, and then so on and so forth for every single boss in the game. That might be a little bit of an extreme example of like mastery. Some people might see it as just being able to do the mechanics of every single boss fight in the game with at least one job. But it can be really different on how people look at it. But nevertheless, kind of, if you're looking to progress far in raids, you should be kind of thinking about being able to learn every single boss fight in the game and being able to do it with multiple different builds, which we talked about earlier. And that is everything that I've listed here. But if anyone has any questions, you can feel free to ask in beginner chat, or if you are comfortable with your voice being on recording, you can ask in voice chat as well, and we can chat for a little bit. And if you want me to go back and talk about anything, we can do that as well.
What about gear requirements and level, like exotics, rares, ascended?
Yeah, so with gear requirements, when we're looking at starting off in raids, we're kind of pretty okay with just exotics. But when we're trying to push to be like really good at raids and being able to clear multiple different boss fights, we're kind of wanting to get ascended gear on every single one of your builds that you're playing, which eventually could then be legendary gear, which is basically ascended gear, but you don't have to keep creating sets of gear for all your different professions. So when you're looking at being able to like be in a static group and be able to clear a bunch of different bosses, you're wanting to get ascended gear so you can perform the best that you are able, which that ascended gear can be stats and gear that has like runes dedicated to whatever build you're playing, which you can pull from whatever website. Heartstuck.gg has been one of my favorite websites recently. They launched a few weeks ago, or a couple months ago now maybe, and they have really good builds that you can load up and learn for being able to do raids. Hopefully this helped people kind of understand how to progress in content. Basic TLDR, do homework on raid bosses, practice raid bosses, get good builds going, have multiple builds, practice those builds, join a group, have fun.
I have a kind of abstract question.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say to someone who like follows along with all of this, but like when they think about like joining a group, get like big like raid anxiety? Because that was my experience when I was first like thinking about getting into raids, and it was a big barrier to get over for a long time for me. So I guess, what would you say like directly to someone who is experiencing like raid anxiety?
Yeah, raid anxiety is also something that I experience, as well as anxiety in many other forms as well, and also a barrier for me in a lot of games. For me, with Guild Wars 2, one of the ways that I overcame raid anxiety is just by spending a lot of time to become really good at Guild Wars 2, really good in quotation marks, which just helped kind of boost my confidence going into groups. Additionally, I only raid in Guild Wars 2 with people that I am comfortable with and have acclimated with, I guess. So I raid with friends in TOA. When looking at like anxiety itself, it can be really different for a lot of different people. So like ego boosting and then only playing with people I'm comfortable with works for me. Might be different for a lot of different people. above everything, the most important approach to anxiety would be like professional help, of course, and like working with like a therapist to be able to overcome anxiety. But there are a lot of different like strategies that you can use to overcome anxiety in different capacities. With resources, one resource that I like a lot, specific for games, is Healthy Gamer GG on YouTube. He is a licensed psychiatrist, I believe is the proper term, who focuses mostly on gaming and mental health issues direct with gaming and like streaming. So I would recommend that YouTube channel, and you could find different resources on anxiety. I'm not sure if there is or if he has a dedicated video about like raids and MMOs specifically and anxiety about that. And then additionally, I was also hoping on talking a lot more about anxiety and raid anxiety in the future as well, and like a dedicated probably be a video.
Cool, thank you. I definitely didn't know about Healthy Gamer, so I will check that out.
Yeah.
That sounds cool.
I'll link him in beginner chat. Oh yeah, Knighted Angel commented that raid anxiety is a legit thing that ANET had addressed by enacting Emboldened as a way to help new people to start raiding. And yeah, I think that's definitely helpful for a lot of people with like performance-based anxiety, because easier fights are easier to get into and will make people more comfortable with approaching, knowing that the fight is easier. Yeah, if there are no more questions, I'm gonna hop off. And I'm gonna thank everyone for hanging out, and I'll post this VOD sometime, maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow, and I'll share it, and then I'll send a bunch of resources that we talked about in beginner chat.